Because addictions are so destructive, us as preppers should avoid them at all cost. We should stay as far away from them as possible. If you hang around people that have addictions, if you know someone that has addictions, you may want to really reconsider spending time with them. Now, you may say, well, they're my friend or they're a family member. And I totally understand that. But just remember, you become who you're around, typically speaking. So if it's someone that you're very close to and you care about a lot, there's nothing wrong with trying to help them. But a lot of times when it comes to addictions, the person has to help themselves. So a lot of times it's better for both parties if you remove yourself from the person who's addicted, because you don't enable them continuously. And sometimes we don't even know or recognize that we're enabling people and keeping them from getting better. But when you're around someone, especially if you care about them, it's easy to kind of give in to whatever it is that they want. And they may say things, well, I don't have any money for food. But in reality, they're trying to get money for their addiction. And so here are 13 universal or global addictions that preppers should certainly avoid. Number one, tobacco products. It could be dip, it could be cigarettes, whatever it is that is your poison. The nicotine is highly addictive. Of course, there's a lot of other chemicals that are in tobacco products that are addictive, but nicotine is one of the top ones. So there's a lot of people who would say, well, get the patch, or use a vaping device and just slowly transition yourself off of that nicotine. And for a lot of people, it actually works, even like the nicotine gum. But there's also other people it doesn't work very well. And sometimes it's because there's not enough discipline to actually maintain the transition. In some cases, people just never stop vaping, that they just kind of continue to do it and do it and do it. So you got to make that decision. For a lot of people, you will not have tremendous side effects. You will have certainly some, but you do not, have to go to a hospital and detox when you're coming off of nicotine. Some people do have some severe withdrawals. So obviously check with your local doctor, your physician, to see, what is best for you. But I know people who have been, a smoker for years, for example. And, cigarette smokers, they sometimes even dipped. And I even know people who smoke pipes. And in each of those examples, what they did that worked for them, of course, this is just what worked for them, not for everyone, but they just went cold turkey. And that's something to really consider if your body can handle it. Now, if you've been addicted to nicotine for decades, you may need some intervention. But making that decision, making that really difficult choice and putting a line, in the sand and saying, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, can help with a lot of different types of addictions, some more than others. The next is coffee. And of course, there's other things that have caffeine in it as well. Soft drinks, there's people who are addicted to soft drinks. But basically what I'm talking about here is caffeine. And this stuff, I know someone personally that was addicted to caffeine. And it's just kind of ridiculous of how much they drink of it just to get their fix. And it's not just like they get their fix at a certain time of the day. I had a family member that drank soft drinks all through the day, and it was no big deal to go through a 2-liter or even sometimes maybe almost 2 liters. And that's a lot. That's a lot of soft drink. So that's something to be kind of careful of. I personally have, over a long period of time now, I have stopped drinking soft drinks. I think it's probably been a little over 10 years since I've drank soft drinks. And I can tell a big difference. I mean, a major difference, in fact. My blood sugar is all good. My mood's a lot better and things like that. The next universal addiction is alcohol. And I think that's probably the one that a lot of people think of as probably like the top 3. And it probably could be. I know it's up there. Obviously, it's in the top 13 because it's on the list. But alcohol is one of those very difficult vices, addictions, if you will, that really grabs a hold of you. And some people really are predisposed to alcoholism more so than others. Some people genetically just cannot deal with, drinking it. And also, once you get hooked, it's just really hard to get off. Really, really hard. So alcohol, by some people's measures, is also a gateway drug to other things. And that leads us into the next one is drugs. Now this one it's becoming a bigger problem, in my opinion, more so than even alcoholism. Illegal drugs and legal drugs. I mean, drugs of all types are becoming misused and abused in a record rate, I think, globally. And I think this is just a symptom of the state of the world, people's level of health, mental health, physical health. It's all kind of reflecting that there's a problem with people and their lifestyle. This is my opinion, of course. But it's not my opinion that there's a drug problem in the world. And especially in the USA, we have lots of problems. But I know for a fact, though, even in developing countries, there's drug problems. So it just depends on where you live. The next universal addiction is gambling. I only know one person personally that had a gambling problem, and that person's not with me anymore. But gambling is kind of like a type of compulsion, and it's brought on, though, by that sensation when you do get a win. It's that rush, and it comes from the dopamine. Dopamine's a really big factor in a lot of these addictions. In fact, the next few is going to also involve dopamine, and that includes food addictions. I enjoy a meal, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying a meal. I'm sure you enjoy your meals. I hope you enjoy your meal. Food is probably ranked, and from what I've seen in the research, it is ranked number one in terms of the most satisfying thing that humans do. And but when you find yourself trying to deal with stress with food, then you may have a problem. And the second most reinforced addiction that people commonly have is a sex addiction. And people misuse their body, and they use pornography, and so they mess up their system. And that's also, once again, a major way to dump a lot of dopamine in your system. Now, in the modern world here, we have a lot of artificial realities, social media, video games, and that in combination with the next one, which is the internet. You have all this instant gratification. And what I have seen and what I've read in studies is that this as well is just constantly creating a dopamine release, to the point that we're becoming so used to all this that when we don't get our fix, we feel off, So it's almost like diabetes. How you have sometimes like a insulin resistance? Well, that's kind of what's happening here with dopamine. We're having like a dopamine resistance in a sense that we've used it so much and so constantly throughout our life, well, in the modern day life, that the body just isn't able to keep up. And it's just kind of not able to catch up enough to give us that fix all the time. And of course, one way to reset some of this, especially with the video games, artificial reality, social media, internet, is to take a break from it for a while. Just kind of walk away or set time limits during the day. I still think it's good to have a day or two that you just have no interaction with your computer or phone. Maybe, of course, if you have to take a phone call, but in terms of getting on the internet or to use any kind of like messaging system, I think it's good to take some breaks for real. And so a lot of people are addicted. I mean, full on addicted to their phone, to their laptop, desktop, basically this the whole system of being able to look things up. And I think that's something that I deal with myself. And I'm trying to make better and better boundaries, because it's so easy just to jump on the phone. And then like a couple hours later, you kind of realize that you just got lost in it. And you jumped around maybe at 5, 6, 20 different sites. And you looked up all this stuff. And yes, you can learn a lot of things. And the internet is not like inherently an evil, bad thing. But it's very easy to misuse and mismanage. The next is risky behavior. And I guess that the addiction part of this comes from the adrenaline rush, which for some people, they're just adrenaline junkies. You hear that phrase sometimes. But risky behaviors like, skydiving, climbing up a rock face, but without any type of safety equipment, driving at high speeds. And you probably get the idea here, but there are quite a few people that just, to feel alive, they have to be in a state of elevated stimuli, and then to get that adrenaline dump in their head. And I think it's dangerous, really dangerous. Also, I want to say that when it comes to doing risky behaviors, there's a lot of young people that just feel invincible. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why there's so many, car wrecks and stuff, because young people, and I did it myself, you just drive too fast and you think that you can do things that you really can't. So it's problematic, to say at the least. The next is a shopping addiction. A lot of times people buy things on their credit and they can't pay it off at the end of the month. And so it's not just going out there and getting your fix, in terms of buying clothes or whatever it is that you like, to get that dopamine rush and basically to kind of feel some type of connection or to kind of be a part of a trend, or, you feel like that you're trying to like be a part of something larger than yourself. But on the backside, once again, you got the financial obligations that really start to show, and especially if you just can't pay your bills and, and you shop way too much. Well, right there is probably a sign that there's something wrong. So like for me, that's not so much a problem. I do have a list of things that I want to buy, but I always delay all my purchases. And I've talked about that many times on the channel. It's something that's very good to get in practice, because you'll realize that most things that you think you want or have to have really aren't something that you want or have to have. You realize that after the newness wears off. So I invite you to write everything out and wait a few days at least, but if you can, wait a couple weeks. About 95% of the things that I buy are not priority purchases. It's not like I have to have it tomorrow. And so I just write them down, and I go on my browser and I bookmark them. I may even go to Amazon, bookmark them there. And so I have all the things that are organized. I know what they are. I'm not going to forget about it. And that's one good thing. So once you get them out of your mind and you put them on paper or you put them on your phone or whatever, you can just kind of rest easy. And you can just say, okay, every once in a while, I'm going to check and see if that's still a valid thing that I need to buy. Sometimes I even wait, a few months before the purchase. And what I notice is that I rarely make those purchases because I find that I don't really need it after all. It was just kind of more the concept that I was into, instead of the actual item that I just have to have. So let's go into number 12. We're doing pretty good here. We're working through the list. Now, this is the work addiction. So having an addiction at work to whatever you do, or maybe it's the concept of having a certain type of job or title. And this is kind of feeding into a type of compulsion, really, that deals with like self-worth and your identity. And if you kind of identify with a certain type of image of yourself, and it mainly is you at work doing a certain thing, and you find yourself always at work, never wanting to come home, that's probably a problem, for sure, especially if you have a family and you never see them. It's a big problem. I know firsthand of how that is when I was young. I had a certain family member that was a workaholic. And it's a really sad thing to witness as you grow up, because you're like wondering about this person, which should be someone that you should be very close to, but you don't ever get to be that close because there's no time to be close. And lastly, you have the addiction to anger. A lot of people don't think about this one, but it is very true. It is, when you do the research, this one pops up quite a bit. It's probably one of the least talked about, but anger, this ability to express. But what is it really expressing, though? Basically, anger is really highly related to fear. And so someone that's very insecure, someone that is fearful, usually expresses various types of anger. And anger is like a very primitive expression, too, when you think about it. It's very low in terms of vibration. It's low in terms of information. It's just an expression, of frustration on a lot of levels. And this also kind of ties into communication skills. A lot of people that have a lot of anger problems also are not able to communicate with others very well. So it's something that if you get angry a lot, obviously you want to see, why you're getting angry, what's causing it. Is there a trigger? Are you causing it yourself? Or what's going on? And maybe find out ways to solve that problem so that you don't get yourself worked up. There's so many times that we put ourselves in situations that are completely unnecessary, or we deal with things in a way that's very ineffective. So I welcome you to check that out. So in recap, let's just go through them real quick. Tobacco products, because of the nicotine. We have various things like soft drinks and coffee because of the caffeine. And we also have alcohol. We have drugs, both legal and illegal, gambling, food, sex, video games or artificial realities. Obviously, this and the last few that we talked about are dealing with dopamine mainly. Especially the internet is a real big one that, I think a lot of people are starting to really kind of notice that they just keep on wanting to jump on the internet and do things. It's a really convenient way to distract yourself. And then you have risky behavior, which is mainly about adrenaline. Shopping, which could be a lot of things, but it probably has to do with a mix of dopamine and an addiction to connect to a larger force than themselves, a group of people or a mindset or a trend, because they want to help define themselves. They may have low self-esteem. Also, we have work, we just talked about, based on compulsion, and anger, the inability to express efficiently. So hopefully this kind of gets you started when you're thinking about this, about things to avoid as a prepper. Certainly addictions are one of those. And it's something that you have to be really mindful of if there was an infrastructure issue that happened. And, modern civilization a lot of times is not as, I guess when I'm thinking about the word of hardy, but durable as sometimes that we think it is. I mean, it doesn't take that much to knock out your power. It doesn't take that much to contaminate your water, source. It doesn't take that much to damage the gas line and so forth. So a lot of times things are a lot more fragile. In particular, the infrastructure is very fragile. And if you're not able to go to the store for whatever reason to get certain things that you're addicted to, then you're going to have a fallout on some level. It could be very minor, or it could be just of epic proportion. You might have a meltdown, and other people may be relying on you, dependent on you, in fact, to get through this situation, this possible emergency. And that's the last thing that we really need, is to be going through our own personal crisis when there's an outward crisis present as well. So can you imagine that? If you're, let's just pick one of these. Let's just say that you are, someone that is completely hooked on cigarettes. Okay. And let's just do a double whammy real quick too. And let's say that you have to have your morning coffee or you can't get going. a lot of people say that, and it's actually sad because it's true. I have friends that are literally in like their early 30s, and they can't get going without 1 or 2 cups of coffee when they wake up. Like, it's that severe. But let's just say that you don't have any access to cigarettes, and you can't get your coffee, and you don't have any access to soft drinks to give you that nicotine either. All right, that's going to be really rough, especially if, it could be weeks before you could get access to that. You're going to go through withdrawals. You're going to have headaches, possibly migraines. It's just going to be, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You're going to have all kinds of anxiety, and it's going to be bad, really bad. So it's better now, for the obvious reasons, of course, just to have better health, but just go ahead and start to fade that out of your life, or when possible, go cold turkey with it and just stop. Make the decision. Of course, it sounds real easy, but it is very difficult, and to really do this. But you're going to be thankful for it. You have to make a decision eventually of what you're going to allow to take over and control your life. And hopefully you decide that you have control ultimately of what you say, do, and think, and not be reliant on drugs or other different types of infrastructures to manipulate you as you go through your life. You want to take control. And so much that I've seen lately is that people are so willing to relinquish control in their life because it's so much easier to just play the video game, have your sodas and your coffee, and to go out shopping when you're down and out, or just stay late at work because you're empty inside, or to express yourself because you're stuck and you're fearful and you get angry and you lash out. These things are all very non-productive. Of course, you don't need me to say that, but I think videos like this are necessary in this world because we don't sit and ponder very much the implications of these addictions. Now, these are just the top 13, and there are many others. And so be aware that if you're being held captive by anything in particular and you feel like that you can't say no to it, then obviously there really is a problem, and you should look further into what is going on. So, hey, thanks for checking the video out. You guys take care.